This is how to change out your switch and your actuator on a clutch lever for a 2018 and similar BMW S1000RR, which are critical for your quick shift and your cruise working. If you're like me and you've had issues with your quick shifter working reliably or your cruise control on a 2018 or similar BMW S1000RR, a lot of times the culprit can be this switch. It's a dual micro switch, and the actuator possibly as well. It's what's actuated by the clutch lever. In the video about troubleshooting your quick shifter, which is in the description below, you can see all that I went through until finally realizing that this was the culprit. Now, even though the ones on here may be okay, I'm going to switch them out just to make sure that everything is starting off fresh. The lever system was off of a used bike. Sometimes people bend these tabs to make them work. So I just want to start with everything fresh to make sure that I don't have this issue anymore. Now, before we remove the clutch lever, we want to mark exactly where it is on the handlebar so that we can get it back in the same place and save time readjusting everything. So the first thing I'll do is get out a little piece of masking tape. I'm just going to put it right on the inside surface of that clamp. Right now I have the tape right where I want it. And if you can see, there's a little crosshair right there that I'd previously marked that shows the alignment between that mark and where that split between the two materials is. So that's where it has to go. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and loosen the clutch cable because I want it to move around as freely as possible, so we'll readjust that at the end of the job. So you turn it all the way in. There we go. Now see how it's real sloppy? Now we need a Torx head wrench to get that out. It's just this one screw. Okay. And then this clamshell opens. I'm going to take that screw out, put it down here so I don't lose it. You can see the bottom of it. And here's the actuator piece. And here's the little plate that I talked about in the other video. And there's the actual switch. The first thing I'll do is disconnect this cable. So there's the little nipple right there that catches in the hole. I'm going to pry that up with a screwdriver and pull that connector off. There we go. If I want to get that plate off, it takes a very tiny Torx screw wrench. In fact, it's the tiniest one I have. I'm turn it by hand now. All right, there's that screw. It's a long one. There's that plate. And pull those off of there. Always pay attention to how things are put in place. So you can see there's a plate that goes there, and then there's a little boss right there that goes in that hole. So what we're going to want to do is recreate that with the new pieces. This new screw, you can kind of see there's some Loctite on the end of it that BMW puts on there. So it's a small screw, you definitely don't want it falling off. Now we're going to take the new plate in the same orientation, and you basically put it on that same way, and it fits snug in there, and you can see that it's right because the hole for the screw is open as the through hole. See, the screw can't go through there, so you can't mess it up. It has to go in that way. And then the switch itself has to go in this way because the screw has to go through it down into everything. So again, the Germans engineered it properly to make sure that you couldn't mess it up. So we'll put that. Actually, while we have this off, I'm going to take this actuator off as well. Now this has a Phillips screw head on it, which I don't think is, now I know it's not the one from the factory because the new screw that came with the kit has the Torx head on it. go ahead and remove this one. Just kind of make note of how the actuator is in there. There it goes. You know how it was kind of in that way. And you can kind of see, hopefully, that this is a little kind of beat up and worn out. So this probably was due for a change. Like I said, both parts are worn and older. I just want to make sure everything's new, starting fresh. So now I'm going to put on the new switch. And the last thing it needs up on top is that plate. For some reason, they actually sent 2 plates. I only need 1. Now when you're trying to figure this plate out, this would be the way where it would be bypassing the switch. You don't want that. You want it rotated around this way. Okay, so that's the orientation you're going to use. Take my new screw, which is the longer one, put it through the plate, the switch, and that bottom plate. And then I'm going to start that with its Loctite by hand. You always want to be real careful with this, especially these tiny screws, because the last thing you want to do is cross thread it. So you want to be real gentle. I'm going to put some tape around this silly set, so I don't have to keep fighting those wrenches falling off every 2 seconds. Now, again, there's how we have the plate. We want it that way so it's not interfering with the switch operation. Now, as far as turning it, it's not like you're going to put a big torque wrench on this. You're going to get it snug. You're going to bear in mind it's a tiny screw and you don't want to strip these threads. Okay, everything feels good and tight. Don't want to overdo that by any stretch. Now, it's time for the actuator on here. We can feel both of those switches clicking, so that's good. Now we're going to take the new actuator and the new screw. We're going to put it in that same orientation it was before. And you can see it's kind of a squared shaft here, and the bottom of this is squared. So you want to do this. Same orientation, and take our shorter screw that we had with all this stuff and start it by hand. Again, real careful. Whoa, shit. I don't know how that happened. But what I don't see is that little screw that just jumped out. Son of a bitch. Oh, here it is. That would have been bad. Yes, this is part of the joy of working on motorcycles. If you open it a little bit, it's probably actually smarter, because then it's easier to put on there. And this actuator is all the way down. It should be to where that lever lines up perfectly with that tab on that switch. So make sure that's seated properly and continue to gently turn in the screw. Snug, but don't kill it. We have everything reassembled. We have the new actuator, we have the new switch with its plate, its bottom plate. Both screws are tight. They have Loctite on them from the factory. The last thing we have to do functionally is to place the connector back where it belongs, which is this way. And you'll see the little nipple poke through that clearance hole to let you know it's in place correctly. And now we just have to put the cable clamp back on. For that, we again get our one screw. Now the clutch cable is a little bit stiff, so even though we have the cable loose, it's still a little bit of a bear. You can probably rotate it up like that and make it a little bit easier. You're gonna have to kind of push these two pieces together. There's a cable that was in the way that goes to the switch housing. That's why. So make sure you get that bottom piece here goes between the clip-on and the cable going into the switch housing. Get that out of the way. And start tightening this a little bit. Once it gets kind of snug, we want to roll it back so where it's even with the blue tape where we had it before. And we're going to line up that mark that we had over here. Make sure all of our cables are clear out of the way. We don't want to cause any kinks anywhere. Okay, and that looks like that's exactly where it was before. Snug it up. Okay, and now we can see it's real loose. So we want to roll that out. And as you'll see in that troubleshooting video, this is one of the key items to make sure that you don't get the same faults I was having with your clutch lever and operation of that quick shift. And again, I'm trying to make sure that I've got these cables cleared behind here. I don't like the way that sits. Now we want to get this set up here. Now your bars are going to be straight when you're driving. You want to get it to where it's not more than like 1/8 of an inch give. Like it shouldn't be much, because like the other video will show you on troubleshooting, if there's any give and it starts blowing back or you rest your fingers on it and stuff, you can jack with that actuator switch and cause the issues I was having. So let's get that good and snug. Let's try that, okay? Take the tape off, and that job is all done. And now we're starting with a brand new switch and actuator to make sure no gremlins come from this part of the world.
Subscribe to my YouTube channel below and let's celebrate turning fuel and air into adrenaline.